As the final bell rang, Hirano stepped out of the school building, his heart still racing from the whirlwind of excitement. His friends surrounded him, their voices bubbling with enthusiasm as they chattered about the anonymous love confession he had received. "It's like a dream come true," they teased, their laughter ringing in his ears. Hirano felt a flush of embarrassment creep up his cheeks, overwhelmed by the sudden attention. Just then, a thought struck him. He had left something important in the classroom. "Hey, you guys go ahead. I'll catch up," he called out, waving them off as he sprinted back down the corridor. The thrill of the moment faded into urgency as he hurried toward his classroom. As he approached, however, he was halted by an unexpected sound, a soft rustling coming from inside. Curiosity piqued, he crept closer to the window, peering in with cautious intrigue. His heart skipped a beat when he spotted a stunning girl standing alone in the classroom. It was Kokoro Goinda, the most beautiful girl in school, renowned for her icy demeanor and her habit of rejecting anyone who dared to approach her. In a panic, Hirano ducked down, barely concealing himself from her view. He watched, heart pounding, as she moved gracefully around the room, her presence both enchanting and intimidating. What was she doing here, all alone? His mind raced with questions, and he couldn't shake the feeling of disbelief. Why would someone as captivating as Goinda be in his classroom? His confusion deepened as he noticed her gliding toward his desk. She sat down, her fingers delicately tracing the surface, as if she were exploring a hidden treasure. Hirano's heart raced. Had they ever even spoken? The thought of her harboring feelings for him seemed impossible, yet he couldn't help but wonder how long she had been hiding them. Suddenly, his attention snapped back to her as she rummaged through her bag, pulling out something large. For a fleeting moment, panic surged through him. Was she holding a bomb? But then he remembered that girls often carried cute trinkets, and he forced himself to breathe. As he continued to watch, his eyes widened in surprise when he spotted a small stuffed bear dangling from her bag. Goinda carefully untied a ribbon from the bear and tied it around the large object she had retrieved. Hirano's heart raced as he tried to decipher her intentions. Then, in a moment that felt suspended in time, she pressed a soft kiss onto the object, a gesture that sent his mind spiraling. It was a gift, and the realization hit him like a bolt of lightning. His suspicions solidified when she gently placed the neatly wrapped ball onto his desk. Hirano watched in astonishment as Kokoro Goinda struggled to fit the large ball into the limited space on his desk. His mind raced with thoughts, each one more frantic than the last. This was the first time he had ever received a gift from a girl. And not just any girl, but the most beautiful girl in school. His heart raced, realizing the significance of this moment. Yet as he observed her determination, a twinge of sadness crept in. It felt as if she was inadvertently ruining the gift with her efforts. Goinda's brow furrowed in concentration as she pushed the ball against the desk, and Hirano couldn't help but find her oddly adorable in her struggle. But he quickly shook himself out of his reverie. He knew he shouldn't just stand there staring. Relief washed over him when she finally acknowledged that the ball wouldn't fit that way. However, his relief was short-lived. In a sudden burst of frustration, Goinda tossed all the books out of the desk and began to shove the ball in again, this time with even more force. Hirano barely contained a gasp, feeling a pang of sympathy for his poor desk as it endured such treatment. "Please be gentle," he silently pleaded, but she seemed oblivious to his unspoken request. Then, to his utter shock, she pulled out what looked like a weapon. His heart raced as he realized it was his recorder. Confusion washed over him. What was she planning to do? For a moment, it seemed like she might play it, but instead, she slammed it down onto the desk with a force that shattered it into two pieces. Hirano's heart sank at the loss of his precious recorder, but he was even more bewildered to see Goinda attempting to use the broken pieces as a lever. It was as if she were practicing some sort of karate on his desk and recorder. As she carefully wrapped the remnants of the recorder in her handkerchief, Hirano felt an urge to comfort her, to tell her it was okay, and that things break sometimes. He was taken aback by the effort she was putting into fixing his desk. Why was she so determined to place the ball there, instead of using his locker or shoe rack? Curiosity piqued. He glanced over to find both his locker and shoe rack in disarray, completely destroyed. When he returned to the classroom, he found Goinda still hard at work, dismantling his desk. Instead of feeling anger, he was struck by admiration for her dedication. He had always thought someone like her lived in a different world, but now she seemed almost divine in her determination. Just then, a teacher peeked into the corridor, and Hirano's heart raced as the teacher's voice boomed, startling him. He worried about being caught secretly watching Goinda. As he turned back to the classroom, his breath caught in his throat when he saw her leap out of the window. The teacher reached him, slamming a paper onto his head, scolding him for his distraction. After the reprimand, Hirano stepped into the classroom, his heart still racing. He picked up the gift from his desk, glancing outside one last time to see Goinda running away. Turning his attention back to the present, he unwrapped it, his eyes widening in shock as he revealed its contents. "Is this the ball you lost during class?" the teacher asked, breaking his moment of awe. All Hirano could think about was how kind Goinda had been. Settling into his new seat by the window, his friends chattered excitedly, urging him to look outside. The bright light momentarily blinded him, but their enthusiasm was infectious. "You're so lucky to see Goinda every day," they exclaimed. Hirano couldn't help but admire Kokuru Goinda from afar. Her beauty captivated everyone at school, and the thought of her brought a smile to his face. He felt a unique happiness knowing that he was one of the few who recognized her kind heart beneath her aloof exterior. Just as he was lost in these pleasant thoughts, his friend nudged him, suggesting they watch Goinda's club practice after class. "It's a great way to get closer to her," his friend exclaimed, eyes sparkling with excitement. However, their plans were swiftly dashed when their professor overheard their conversation. "Today is the day for committee decisions," the teacher announced, a hint of finality in his voice. "You can't leave as soon as the bell rings." With that, the professor exited the classroom, leaving the class representative to manage the committee meeting. The representative stood at the podium, scanning the room. "Is anyone interested in joining the disciplinary committee?" A heavy silence enveloped the classroom, with all the students staring intently at their desks, avoiding eye contact. Hirano felt a wave of anxiety wash over him. He had no desire to join the committee. He just wanted to go home. Out of the 35 students in his class, only 13 would be excused from committee duty, so he figured he could just wait it out. As he sat there, doubts began to creep in. What if he joined the committee and lost all his free time after school? The thought of annoying his fellow committee members, especially if one of them was a girl who would constantly remind him of his duties, sent his imagination spiraling. He envisioned her teasing him during meetings, scolding him for his lack of commitment. Shaking his head, he quickly dismissed those thoughts, but they lingered in the back of his mind. Then, a more pleasant thought crossed his mind. What if someone was waiting for him to raise his hand? A smile crept onto his face as he seriously considered joining the committee. But just as he made up his mind, another dilemma arose. Should he join the pet committee? His love for animals tugged at his heartstrings. He also found the recycling committee appealing, thinking it would be an easier task. The athletic committee, however, was out of the question. He wasn't exactly the most athletic student, and looking at his strong classmates made him realize just how hard athletes worked. The class president called for volunteers for the disciplinary committee, and to Hirano's surprise, Zima raised her hand. The room erupted in cheers, even though she seemed reluctant to join. Hirano was puzzled. Why had no one volunteered before? Just then, another student, Sorum, raised his hand, and the class leader beamed at the sight of a handsome guy joining the committee. Hirano found the whole situation strange, and his suspicions deepened. When the class leader called for volunteers for the health committee, needing 2 girls and 2 boys, 4 hands shot up immediately. The same enthusiasm erupted when the cleanup committee was announced. Hirano's suspicion grew. He could hear groans from students who had previously been silent, and he sensed something unusual was afoot. Suddenly, the students were called for the library committee, and Hirano's friend seemed to be struck by something. The object rolled toward Hirano's desk, and he quickly picked it up, only to find it was a ball of ice. Confusion washed over him. How was it possible to have ice on such a sunny day? Curiosity piqued. He glanced out the window and spotted Goinda hiding in the bushes, a slingshot in her hand. She aimed again, this time forcing a girl to raise her hand for the library committee. Hirano was baffled by her antics, but felt a strange sense of relief that the committee members were being decided so quickly. Was she trying to speed up the homeroom for his sake? He quickly shook that thought away, convincing himself she was doing it for everyone. Despite Kokoro Goinda's questionable methods, Hirano found her kindness truly admirable. As soon as the class president mentioned the pet committee, he eagerly shot up his hand, ready to assist Goinda. However, his enthusiasm was short-lived when an ice ball unexpectedly smacked him in the face, forcing him to retract his hand just as quickly. The class president then shifted gears, calling for volunteers for the athletic committee. Hirano kept his hand down, fearful of what Goinda might do next. But then, another tiny ball of ice hit him, and before he knew it, his hand shot up involuntarily. Panic set in as he thought, Goinda must hate me for peeking at her the other day, and now she's punishing me by making me join this committee. The thought of being trapped in a committee with her felt like a nightmare. Just then, Gori Tsuji, the big guy in class, raised his hand too. Hirano felt a wave of relief wash over him, thinking he might be off the hook. He tried to lower his hand, but another ice ball hit him, forcing him to raise it again. He glanced around, noticing Gori was also getting pelted with ice balls, yet he seemed unfazed, keeping his hand raised despite the barrage. Hirano silently rooted for Gori, admiring his strength and resilience. He's the perfect candidate for the athletic committee, he thought. Meanwhile, Goinda ramped up her attack, launching more ice balls with determination. Hirano was sure Gori wouldn't budge, but his hopes were dashed when Goinda pulled out a larger ice ball and practically buried Gori under a flurry of icy projectiles. The absurdity of the situation left Hirano stunned. He tried to show solidarity with his friend by lowering his hand, but that only resulted in more ice balls hitting him. The class president soon made it official, announcing that Hirano and Tomoda would be the new athletic committee members. After class, Hirano stood in the corridor with Tomoda, who complained about how tiring it was to be on the committee. Hirano simply nodded, lost in thought. Goinda must hate me for watching her that day, he mused, even though he had kept his feelings a secret. At their first athletic committee meeting, they were scolded for being late, but Hirano couldn't focus on anything except the fact that Goinda was sitting next to his seat. His heart raced as he tried to make sense of what all of this meant. Usually, when class ended, students were free from the exhausting routine and could enjoy thrilling games between girls. But today was different. Hirano was stuck in another meeting where almost everyone was drowsy, making the situation even worse. He wished he weren't on the athletic committee at all. In stark contrast to his struggles, Goinda seemed perfectly at ease, which made him wonder if she actually enjoyed these meetings. As he thought about the committee, he couldn't shake the feeling that she had somehow pushed him into joining so they could be together every day. His imagination took a wild turn as he envisioned himself with Goinda after class, where he accidentally tripped and fell on top of her. In his daydream, she looked at him seductively and asked if he wanted to get closer. He found himself rejecting the offer, annoyed that she had surprised him like that. Lost in his thoughts, he almost shouted out loud, but caught himself just in time. His mind was still occupied with Goinda, as he tried to decipher whether getting closer meant kissing or something else entirely. He quickly dismissed the weird thoughts, but couldn't help but admire how bold Goinda was, forcing him to see how fun the athletic committee could be. As his thoughts spiraled, he attempted to spin a pencil in his hand, but he failed every time. Frustrated, he almost begged the pen to spin at least once, imagining what it would be like. Just then, Hirano caught a glimpse of a perfectly spinning pen and turned to the side, only to find Kokoro Goinda effortlessly twirling a pencil in her hand. His eyes widened in awe as she showcased various techniques, completely immersed in her own world. He noticed her arm trembling slightly from the effort, and soon realized her entire body was shaking under the strain. Suddenly, with a flick of her wrist, she launched the pencil toward the teacher. Hirano gasped as the pen made a perfect loop around the professor before returning to Goinda, who caught it with expert precision. Without missing a beat, she pulled out 2 more pencils and began spinning them between her fingers, not dropping a single one. Hirano was utterly captivated, feeling as if he were watching a circus performance. She could easily showcase her talent to the world, he thought, mesmerized. In the background, the professor announced that the meeting was over, but Hirano was oblivious, his focus solely on Goinda. He noticed something peculiar in her hand, a pencil being used to spin the others. He marveled at her creativity, completely absorbed in the spectacle. The professor, still unaware of the unfolding drama, left the classroom, and Goinda paused her performance for a moment. Hirano thought she might have glanced in his direction, but he quickly dismissed it as wishful thinking. His heart raced when Goinda suddenly walked over to his desk. His imagination took flight, envisioning her confessing her feelings for him. But reality shattered that fantasy as she placed the pencil in his hand and formally introduced herself. "I'm Kokoro Goinda," she said, before turning and walking out of the classroom. Hirano and his classmates stared at her retreating figure, stunned by the unexpected encounter. The surprise left him reeling. Did she introduce herself because we're both on the athletic committee? The thought that she might have approached him because of his clumsy pen spinning was mortifying. Deep down, he knew it was all a misunderstanding. Goinda couldn't possibly have feelings for him. While she was kind, he sensed that she viewed him merely as another first-year student, which made him feel uneasy. Meanwhile, outside the classroom, Goinda slumped against the wall, clearly frustrated and disappointed that she hadn't had more time with him. As school finally ended, Hirano stepped out of the building, only to be caught off guard by the sight of rain pouring down. Regret washed over him for not bringing an umbrella, and he felt annoyed with himself for not thinking ahead and borrowing one from a friend earlier. Standing there, contemplating his next move, he suddenly heard voices approaching. To his surprise, it was Goinda and her friends chatting animatedly about the unexpected downpour. Hirano seized the opportunity to avoid them, feeling anxious about the impending interaction. He quickly ducked behind a nearby wall, hoping to remain unseen. However, despite his efforts, one of Goinda's friends spotted him and sauntered over. The girls immediately noticed his nervous demeanor and began teasing him. Hirano felt his face flush with embarrassment as they laughed, one of them grabbing his arm and comparing their heights, poking fun at him for being short. Part of his mind was distracted by the softness of the girl's body pressed against his arm, but he snapped back to reality when one of them exclaimed, "I have a great idea." Panic surged through him as he wondered if they would demand some sort of fee just for being near them. To Hirano's surprise, the girl stopped bothering him and instead asked Goinda to lend him the extra umbrella she had. They both left, mentioning they had to attend cooking class. Hirano stood there, heart racing, waving goodbye when suddenly an umbrella slammed against the side of his face. The impact jolted him back to reality, and he rubbed his sore cheek, thanking Goinda for the umbrella. His mind began to wander, wondering if Goinda had hit him out of jealousy over his interaction with the other girls. But he quickly gave himself a reality check, reminding himself that she couldn't possibly be jealous. She was simply lending him an umbrella out of kindness. "I'm sorry for bothering you, Goinda," he said, promising to return the umbrella after washing it. He finally opened it, only to discover that the umbrella was torn at the top, making it nearly impossible to use. This only reinforced his belief that Goinda was unlike anyone else. Just as he felt a wave of relief when she winked at him and pulled out another umbrella from her bag, his hope was short-lived. The first umbrella she handed him was also torn, followed by every other umbrella she produced, all seemingly broken. Hirano began to wonder if her bag was filled with damaged umbrellas, or if it was just full of holes. Although he knew he shouldn't complain since he was borrowing her things, he couldn't shake the feeling that she was teasing him with the situation. His thoughts were interrupted when he reached for the next umbrella, but Goinda held on to it firmly. "Sorry," he blurted out, unsure of what to do next. To his surprise, she didn't respond, but instead gently caressed his arm with her free hand, sending his heart racing. Before he could process what was happening, they found themselves walking together under the same umbrella. Hirano could hardly believe it. He pinched himself, wondering if this was real or just a dream. As they walked side by side, he couldn't help but stare at Goinda's long, beautiful eyelashes and her clear, bright skin, which made her look even more delicate. Overwhelmed by everything, he felt completely confused. As he took another step forward, he accidentally bumped into her, and for a split second he was shocked, nearly jumping away in surprise. But before he could react, Goinda quickly pulled his arm, bringing them even closer together. His face turned crimson, and he quickly looked away, trying to avoid the awkwardness of the moment. He kept repeating to himself that this was a bad situation, but Goinda seemed completely unfazed. Meanwhile, Hirano struggled to figure out where to look, unsure how to handle their close contact. Despite his best efforts to avert his gaze, he accidentally caught a glimpse of her undergarments, causing his mind to race with thoughts. It took him a moment to realize he could see clearly because her clothes were soaked. "I'm so sorry for not noticing your condition earlier," he stammered, his heart pounding. But he couldn't stay calm for long. He noticed a beautiful red line briefly appearing on her skin before it disappeared. Just as he was about to feel disappointed, the line reappeared, only to vanish again. Trying to make sense of his feelings, Goinda then showed him a small board with a red blackout sheet, finally making him realize how powerful this tool was. The next day, Hirano stayed after class to help his teacher, who was genuinely pleased with his willingness to cooperate. "It's not a big deal," he replied, but his mind was elsewhere, preoccupied with the events of the previous day. Although he kept the true reason for staying late a secret, he couldn't help but reflect on everything that had happened. As Hirano walked through the corridor, he tried to reassure himself that Goinda was simply being kind to him and that there was nothing more to it. Yet, no matter how much he told himself this, the thoughts kept invading his mind. Despite his best efforts to avoid her for now, it seemed Goinda wasn't ready to let him off the hook. When he peeked inside his classroom, he was shocked to find her already standing there, as if she had been waiting for him. His heart sank a little. He had hoped for some peace by staying late, but instead, she stood before him, looking as captivating as ever. He tried to calm himself, reminding himself that it was just the lighting playing tricks on his mind. If he saw her again with a clearer head, things might feel different. But when he looked back, she was still there, calm and composed, and Hirano couldn't help but feel a sense of confusion and disbelief. He struggled to keep his errant thoughts at bay, especially since Goinda's friends were with her. All three girls wore aprons, which only added to their beauty. Hirano realized they must have just come from their cooking class. He overheard the girls asking Goinda if she wanted to do something personally, and his gaze fell on his bag resting on the desk. Suddenly, one of Goinda's friends playfully pushed her toward his bag, and she stepped forward, holding something in her hand. Hirano recognized that she was holding some kind of gift, but he quickly reminded himself that she was just being nice. For a moment, he allowed himself to entertain the thought that it might be something more. But then his imagination conjured a wild image of her as an assassin hired to kill him. He watched in surprise as Goinda stood there, holding a shining star in her hand. She looked almost like a character from a video game, the star glowing brightly in the dim light. His first instinct was to think she might use it to attack him, but to his astonishment, Goinda didn't make any threatening moves. Instead, she gently kissed the shiny object, making him reconsider. Could it be a gift for me? He tried to convince himself that this second idea made more sense. After all, high school girls didn't usually bring weapons to school and certainly wouldn't casually kiss one. Goinda seemed completely at ease, showing no signs of hesitation or nervousness as she casually opened his bag. Hirano felt a momentary twinge of fear, wondering if she was planning something. But when he looked inside his bag, he found nothing unusual. He relaxed for a second, thinking it was just his imagination. However, his relief was short-lived. Suddenly, he noticed that his bag now held something unexpected. A weird, shiny, star-shaped ball. Hirano stared at it in confusion, his mind racing with questions. How did it get there? What is she up to? And more importantly, what does this all mean for me? He couldn't shake the feeling that something strange was unfolding before him. He quickly noticed that the ball didn't fit perfectly in his bag, and he watched as Goinda tried to force it inside. He was impressed by her determination to make it work, and found himself rooting for her, and for his bag to survive this ordeal. The shiny star ball made him wonder what kind of edible treat it could be, and after a moment of thought, he decided it must be a cookie. The realization made him even more impressed by her cooking skills, and he couldn't help but imagine how she would look in the kitchen. In the next moment, he returned to cheering for his bag, which seemed to be at the mercy of Goinda, who was resolutely determined to fit the ball inside. He was stunned that she genuinely believed the ball would fit if she pulled his bag hard enough. Worry began to creep in, he needed his bag intact. The next, Hirano felt a sense of relief when Goinda finally stopped fiddling with his bag, thinking she had given up on whatever scheme she was concocting. However, that feeling was short-lived, as he soon realized she was simply coming up with a new idea. Goinda began pulling all his books out and wrapping them around the shiny star-shaped ball with a rubber band, securing the books tightly in an attempt to make everything fit together. Hirano watched her, his heart racing as she struggled. Suddenly, it hit him. If she just removed the spikes from the ball, his books could fit inside easily. It might not be as strong, but it could work for cookies. The thought made him feel a little guilty as he began to wonder what the cookie was going through, and whether it would even stay edible after all this. Just as he was deep in thought, the rubber band Goinda was holding snapped and hit her square on the forehead. Hirano gasped in surprise and quickly ducked down, hoping she hadn't heard him. A mix of concern and embarrassment washed over him as he grappled with the unexpected situation. Tears began to flow from Goinda's eyes, and a small bruise formed on her forehead. When he peeked inside the classroom again, he saw her crying and carefully stepped in, hoping to comfort her. Instead of accepting his comforting words, Goinda bolted out of the classroom, leaving him standing there dumbfounded. It was his first time seeing a girl cry like that, and he had no idea what to do in that situation. He soon realized that the only thing he could do at that moment was eat the cookies. As he bit into one of the spikes on the ball, a packet of cookies tumbled out, making him feel incredibly embarrassed for thinking the spikes were edible. It took him a moment to process that he had received cookies from a girl and that he should be more excited about it. After school, Hirano stood near the shoe rack with his friend, who was trying to talk to a girl. When she rejected him and walked away, she noticed Hirano and stopped. "Hey, what about those cookies you got?" she asked. Hirano bowed slightly and replied, "They were delicious." To his surprise, she asked for his phone number. Nervous but excited, he gave it to her. She quickly entered her number into his phone and left, leaving Hirano staring at her name with a smile on his face. The next morning, he sat in class, feeling confused as he tried to understand girls. Yesterday had been the first time a girl approached him and asked for his phone number. Now, he had a girl's contact saved on his phone. Even though he knew this might be how girls usually acted, he couldn't help but feel thrilled. Just the day before, his friend had teased him for not having any girl's contact info, prompting him to use his mother's name as a cover-up. A sweet smile spread across his face at this new achievement. Suddenly, his classmate's phone dinged loudly, startling everyone around him. As his friend opened his phone, he murmured that it was a message from a senior and warned that he would face consequences if he replied late. Hirano's heart raced at the thought of facing Aiko's wrath for not responding on time. He quickly told himself to stay calm. It was impossible that Aiko would ever text someone like him. Just then, his own phone dinged, and he nearly dropped it in shock. He let out a gasp, quickly covering his mouth before opening the text. It was from Aiko, and he could barely contain his shock as he stared at the provocative picture she had sent him, asking what he thought of it. Hirano's cheeks flushed crimson at the unexpected message, and he planned to respond that it was unclear, but autocorrect had other ideas, changing his response to cleavage. Before he could delete the message, Aiko read it and replied, "That was my elbow." Her friends erupted in laughter, teasing him mercilessly. They showed the phone to Goinda, saying, "That's why she likes him." Before they could say anything else, Goinda snatched the phone from Aiko and told her to stop teasing him. Goinda walked away, her friends glancing at her nervously, unsettled by the cold expression on her face. They whispered among themselves, wondering if Goinda was the reason no one liked them anymore. As she made her way through the hallway, she peeked into Hirano's classroom and saw his friends teasing him. Instead of going inside, she decided to drink some water. Soon, Hirano arrived at the same spot but didn't notice her at first. When he looked up after taking a sip, he found Goinda standing right beside him. Without waiting for any interaction, she called him an idiot and walked out, leaving the water still flowing from the tap as Hirano stood there, bewildered. Girls are such a mystery, he thought, trying to make sense of her abruptness. Returning to class, he couldn't shake off Goinda's insult, which bounced around in his head like a pinball. Finally, he spilled the beans to his buddies, conveniently omitting her name. When pressed for details, he sheepishly deflected, revealing only that it was a senior. It was as if he were protecting Goinda's identity like a Secret Service agent, but even he couldn't muster the courage to utter the offender's name aloud. After confirming it was a girl, his friends asked if he had done something to upset her, but he quickly denied it. They then urged him to imitate how Goinda had called him an idiot, which he did perfectly. His friends cheered, explaining that it was a good sign. Girls usually called someone stupid when they liked them. Still confused, Hirano listened as they elaborated that when a girl says she doesn't like someone, it often means she has feelings for them. One of his classmates began praising Yujin, the self-proclaimed love guru of their class. A small blush crept onto Hirano's cheeks as his friends declared he needed to confess his feelings. Not entirely sure about their suggestion, he hesitated, but when one friend asked if he wanted a girlfriend and held his hand for emphasis, Hirano quickly admitted that he did. His friend, determined to help, handed him a piece of paper he called a love ticket. The note suggested asking the other person to meet behind the gym after school to discuss something important. After giving him the love ticket, his friend wished him good luck, cheering him on to confess his feelings. Hirano, however, didn't agree with their suggestion. Later at home, Hirano kept thinking about his friend's words, still determined not to confess his feelings. Frustration mounted as he grappled with the confusing situation. His nervousness didn't go unnoticed by his father, Bonsaku, who finally asked if something was bothering him. Hirano mumbled that it was nothing, but his father, without knowing the details, advised him to go for it. "It's better to regret trying something than not trying at all," he said. "If something is troubling you, you'll find the answer in it." Hirano didn't respond and headed to his room, muttering that nothing on TV was interesting. Despite his father's practical advice, he couldn't sleep that night, and ended up being the first one to arrive at school the next morning. The PE teacher greeted him warmly, noting that he had arrived before even the students with morning training. Hirano, struggling to stay awake, explained that he hadn't slept well. The teacher suggested he take a nap in his classroom. As Hirano walked through the corridor, he noticed a teddy bear on the ground. It belonged to Goinda. The previous day, she had dropped it on her way home, looking sad about it. This morning, as she entered the school, her friends were surprised by her somber mood, but she simply sighed in response to their questions. When they reached the shoe rack, one of her friends pointed out that her bunny was inside her locker. All of them were surprised to see that someone had kindly placed the bear on a tissue. Goinda grabbed the paper hidden behind the bear while her friends discussed how relieved they were that her issue was resolved. However, Goinda remained silent, not wanting to reveal the real reason behind her sadness. Suddenly, she froze in her spot as she read the note that had been left in her locker. Her friends are still discussing how the person who returned her bunny must be really great, but she just stands frozen in place. Later, at the end of the school day, Hirano is nervously pacing behind the gym when Goinda arrives. She also looks nervous as she slowly approaches him, but Hirano seems to be totally freaking out. His hands are shaking and his mind goes completely blank, leaving him searching for simple words. At that moment, he starts doubting whether her calling him stupid was a good sign at all. After giving himself some silent encouragement, he finally manages to ask her if she wants to date someone. His question seems to amuse Goinda, who squeezes his cheeks affectionately while once again calling him stupid. This time, Hirano is sure that this is a good sign, and he feels so relieved that he slumps forward onto her, finally losing his battle against sleep. When Hirano wakes up, he finds himself staring at the girl of his dreams. It takes him a moment to realize that Goinda is looking down at him. After that, he doesn't waste any time scrambling away from her, quickly starting to apologize while trying to understand what really happened. He feels embarrassed for fainting like that, especially since he was the one who called her over. Once he confirms that he can stand on his own feet, she brushes off her clothes and walks away. Hirano tries his best to come up with something proper to say, but only manages to utter a weak greeting. Goinda is grateful that her ample chest helped protect him when he fell, but she wonders if a slightly bigger chest might have prevented the injury entirely. When she shares this with her friends, they are surprised but offer suggestions, including asking her boyfriend for help. Goinda isn't sure about this idea, but listens as her friends mention ancient methods. Since she doesn't have a boyfriend, one friend offers to help her, and another joins in. After trying their technique and seeing no immediate results, they decide to take a photo instead. Meanwhile, Hirano sits in class, still trying to remember what happened when he fainted. He vaguely recalls feeling something soft, but he isn't sure if it was actually what he is imagining. He is still lost in the happiness of that single moment when he receives another text from Aiko. Even though he is already concerned about the contents of the messages, he opens the chat box and finds 2 pictures of Goinda with her friends. They had also asked him if he noticed something different, to which he replied that it felt like the temperature of the classroom went up a bit. Aiko bursts out laughing at his answer, seeming to really enjoy his misery. Just then, Goinda enters the classroom and peeks at the phone screen, reading the bold messages her friends have sent to Hirano. She is ready to confront Aiko, who quickly apologizes, saying that she couldn't stop herself from questioning him. Aiko instantly explains that she just wants a third opinion on whether their method actually works. In the meantime, Hirano is really struggling to decide if he should stare or just be a decent human being. He keeps looking at his screen and then shaking his head repeatedly, making his friends concerned about his well-being. The next day, Goinda and her friends invite Hirano and his squad to their gang club. When Hirano steps inside the room with his friends, one of Goinda's friends thanks them for joining because they are short-staffed. One of Hirano's friends instantly dismisses her thanks, saying how he was so excited that he couldn't even nap in class. Chuckling at his comment, Aiko advises him not to nap in class during his first year. Just then, Hirano's friend finally notices that he is still standing outside. When they ask him about it, he just says that it's nothing. Hirano keeps thinking about Aiko asking him to visit their club. When he enters the room, he is surprised to find that it looks more like a girl's bedroom. Nervous, he turns his head when he sees Goinda, remembering how he fell asleep on her and secretly saved one of her pictures. Feeling awkward, he avoids looking at her and moves further into the room. Noticing Hirano's discomfort, his friend reassures him, saying he's also nervous about visiting the game club and hasn't been able to nap properly since finding out. The girls comment on how their nervousness is really cute and change the topic, asking what game they want to play. Before they get a chance to decide, Aiko shows them small sticks with text written on them, and Hirano's friend instantly recognizes that it is the king game. The two of them start discussing how people usually play the king game at parties, because it is quite a bold game. They worry about it being immoral and aren't even sure if they are allowed to play this game in school. Soon, they come to the realization that the girls must be testing them, and feel relieved to know that they can play games without any hidden agenda. All this time, Hirano is oblivious to their discussion, and suddenly agrees to play the king game with the girls. His friends are furious at his blunt declaration, feeling like he is tarnishing their name. They yell at him to stay quiet because the girls are testing them and can kick him out if he chooses that game. Hirano is really confused by all this because he just wanted to try this new game and has no hidden agenda. Their argument is interrupted by Aiko happily announcing that they will play the king game and then starts explaining the rules. She explains that the game has 4 rules. The first is that the roles of king and their subjects will be selected by numbers 1 to 5. The second rule is that the king can choose the subjects by their numbers and then give them one order. The boys are relieved that it isn't some hidden trap. Aiko continues, explaining that the king's orders are final, but if a king orders something vulgar, he will be eliminated. After hearing the rules, Hirano's friend Eugene is already prepared to quit the game. His friends are shocked at his decision since he was the one most excited about it. Soon, they start playing the game, and Goinda is the first to get the king title. She orders her subjects to be her chair and sits happily on their backs. Eugene is concerned that this should be taken as a crude order, but no one pays attention. Aiko is the next king, and she orders her subject to thumb wrestle. They all watch as she plays with one of the boys, making Hirano feel a weird pain in his chest. Eugene is praying to be king, and cheers happily when he finally gets the king stick. However, he is a little disappointed that he can only order his subjects, no matter how bold his order is. Hirano asks numbers 1 and 6 to whisper the name of the person they like, making Goinda and him nervous, as they realize they are the subjects. Everyone gets excited and curious about their crushes. Goinda leans close to Hirano, making him even more nervous as he wonders if she'll say his name. Goinda blows air in his ear, making his heart race. His friends eagerly want to know who she likes, but Hirano can't tell them because Goinda hasn't revealed her secret. When they come to school the next day, Aiko's friends corner her in the clubroom, surprised to find out that she didn't share her crush's name with anyone. Leaning closer to her, Aiko reminds her about the king's order and announces that they will play another round without waiting for her reply. Aiko tosses the phone to one of her friends, asking him to contact Hirano immediately. However, her friend doesn't get a chance to make a call as Goinda almost attacks her, desperate to snatch the phone from her hand. Aiko is surprised to see how angry Goinda is and withdraws the order to call Hirano. Instead, she suggests that Goinda has to walk around on the first-year floor and share her crush's name with the first person who approaches her. If no one comes to talk to her, they will not force her again. Soon, Goinda is getting ready to run around the first-year floor. Her friends are not happy with how she is dressed, believing it makes her look more intimidating and that no one will want to approach her. Aiko explains that Goinda isn't trying to look that way, and they both watch their friend. Meanwhile, in the first classroom, Eugene keeps talking about how amazing the club visit was. His friends are getting annoyed with him because he won't stop talking about it. But Eugene just ignores them and goes on about the great sofa in the clubroom. What he liked most was how 3 seniors were sitting on it with their legs crossed. One of his friends finally agrees, admitting that he too struggled to keep his eyes off them, wiping imaginary sweat from his brow. Eugene replies that he also barely kept himself calm, but his friends don't agree with that statement. Hirano is startled when they suddenly turn their attention toward him, asking if he got a good look at Goinda. Eugene wishfully murmurs how she has very nice thighs, and that if she had kept her legs crossed like that, he would have gotten a better look. His other friend quickly calls Eugene out for sharing his wild fantasies, but he is not bothered by it. Fully satisfied with that exciting experience, Hirano finally breaks his silence, politely telling his friends not to talk about Goinda like that. He suddenly feels extremely flustered when he notices both his friends staring at him, so he quickly runs out of the room. As he hurries down the corridor, he immediately regrets his outburst, realizing that Eugene is always like that, and usually, he just laughs it off. However, his thoughts are interrupted when he sees Goinda walking carefully down the hallway, as if she is playing some sort of game. Nervously, Hirano calls her name, but as soon as he hears her sigh loudly in annoyance, he regrets speaking up. Feeling awkward, Hirano quietly asks Goinda to cover herself properly since she is leaning against the wall. Without a word, Goinda stands up, pulls down her clothes, and nods at him in acknowledgement. Hirano quickly regrets what he said and apologizes, realizing it may have come out wrong. Just as he turns to walk away, Goinda suddenly grabs his hand, pulling him toward her and slamming him against the wall. She leans in close to him, remembering what her friend had said about round 2. Looking at Hirano, she simply says his name and walks away without explaining anything. Hirano stands there stunned, slumping against the wall as he tries to calm his racing heartbeat. Later, when he explains the events to his friends, Eugene instantly says that she must be very angry with him. When Goinda returns to her friends, they eagerly ask her about her mission, but to their surprise, she asks if they can see her undergarments. The next day, Aiko, in a playful mood, lifts Goinda's skirt to find that she is wearing shorts today. Before Goinda can respond, their other friend repeats the action, lifting Aiko's skirt and teasing her about also wearing shorts. Aiko, embarrassed, blushes and hurriedly explains that she did it after asking them about their underwear the day before. Her friend laughs at her embarrassment, but stops teasing when Aiko reveals that she is wearing cute underwear today. Aiko quickly says that it's not good, and that if anyone sees her clothes, it could cause trouble. Hirano is still lost in thought about Goinda's sweet voice when he accidentally stumbles upon the girls arguing about their underwear. One of them surprises him by showing him her panties, and then casually walks back to her friends. Aiko then shows him her shorts proudly, asking for Goinda's approval. The girls continue arguing, with Aiko defending her shorts, while her friend insists they're not cute. She even tries to tell her friend how great she would look in shorts, but the other just thinks she is tricking her. All 3 of them turn toward Hirano to ask his opinion about their choices. He is already struggling and nervously replies that this is all a bit too much for him. Soon, the three of them go back to the club room, where Goinda instantly removes her shorts, saying she was insulted because of them. Aiko quickly follows her, saying that nothing has changed because of them. Hirano's friends find him sitting on the floor with his face hidden, and they become worried about him feeling overwhelmed by everything. Eventually, Hirano ends up in the infirmary, where he checks his temperature and finds that it's normal. He thinks about Goinda, but when he looks around, he sees his friends there. Concerned for his health, they offer to take him home, but he refuses, saying that his parents will come to pick him up. After they leave, the nurse informs him that his parents will be a little late and suggests that he rest. She also recommends that he change into gym clothes if he feels sweaty. Lying alone in the bed, Hirano realizes that he must have passed out while changing his clothes. Being sick like this also makes him feel a bit lonely, and he accidentally calls out Goinda's name. Shocked by his own action, he quickly covers his mouth, relieved that no one heard him. Just then, the curtains are pulled aside and Goinda peeks at his bed. Hirano instantly closes his eyes, pretending to be asleep since he feels really embarrassed. Even with his eyes closed, he is shocked to feel his senior climb up on the bed, and his first thought is that Goinda is planning to sleep next to him. He lies there idly, feeling like this must be a dream, but when he feels her cold hands on his forehead, he realizes that this is happening in real life. The situation is enough to freak him out, but he keeps his eyes closed, doing his best to pretend that he is asleep. Hirano sighs deeply when Goinda finally leaves. After a moment, he feels a little disappointed because usually, people would stay longer to take care of him. Just then, he hears a noise and is surprised, thinking that Goinda might be taking her clothes off. His heart starts racing as he wonders what she is up to when he hears her say she needs to warm him up. He begins to panic, not knowing what will happen next. Quickly, he sits up in bed, wanting to stop her. But when he looks outside, he is shocked to see her grinding something like a professional pharmacist. This only confuses him more because he had imagined something entirely different. Not realizing that she was simply putting on an apron, he silently watches her, not understanding why she is making medicine for him. His confusion grows when she takes a sip of the drink, and he becomes convinced that she's trying to poison him. As he watches her spit out the medicine, his fear of the bitter taste increases. When Goinda returns to his room, he quickly pretends to be asleep, hoping to avoid the situation. However, Goinda doesn't let him escape and climbs onto his bed, squeezing his cheeks to open his mouth, clearly concerned about him. For a moment, Hirano thinks about resisting her, but he goes completely still when he realizes that it would be an indirect kiss. When Hirano wakes up again, he is surprised to see that he has no fever. Rolling to the other side, he thinks about the crazy dream he had when he spots Goinda lying on the bed next to him.